Hello everyone, it's Lisa from Epic Yarn Gems. Today I am going to be walking through a tutorial of the star beret pattern that I will be sharing with you. Here are the measurements of the beret, and as you can see, I'm just using leftover yarn, no big skeins or anything, and that's why I kind of like this pattern is because it takes not a ton of yarn and you can use up all those little pieces and parts that go together. So let's get started. The first thing that we're going to do is we are going to use our 5.5 millimeter hook, and we are going to start with a magic circle or a magic ring. I'll put a link on this video on how to make a magic ring in case you need a little more practice or you would like a little more detail on how to make that ring. And the first thing we start with is a chain 2. This chain 2 does not count as your double crochet. Then what we're going to do is we're going to go right into the center of that ring, and we are going to make 10 double crochets into that ring. One thing I just want to let you know about this little beret is that I have made some textures in here. If you don't want any of the textures, you can simply use half double crochets and double crochets, but I just thought the texture added a little bit to it. I hope that you don't think it makes it too complicated to make, but it does, use some of the different stitches that I've shown you along the way. The first thing, like I said, is this magic ring. The one thing about this magic ring is always make sure that you count your stitches first, because if you're supposed to start with 10 and you have 11 or 9, your counting is always going to be off, and then you're going to have to start all over again. The other thing about the magic ring is the little tail that's left over. Make sure you give that a really firm tug. This way the center won't come undone, and then you can just weave in the ends when you're done with your beret or hat or whatever you're using a magic ring for. But just make sure that that tail is pulled nice and tight. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to start with row 2, and all my rows here start with a chain 1. You can do this in a round if you prefer and not do the chain 1, but typically I always like to do a chain just to secure things and to make things a little more straight so that I know where they start and end. But in this, you're going to go around each of these posts. So you're going to do a front post double crochet, and then in the stitch itself, you're going to do a double crochet. So you're going to come out of this with 20 stitches. So like I said, you're going to go around the post, do a front post double crochet, and then you're going to go into the top of that stitch of that post, and you're going to do a double crochet. And what this is doing is it's the start of all of the spokes of the star. In this case, you will have 10 spokes, and you will also have 10 double crochets. I tell you this, and I tell you this slowly, because when I did this video to start off with, I didn't do this. I forgot that you have to do each and every post, and I alternated them, and man, I made a really teeny tiny beret. I didn't realize it until I got pretty close to the end of the top of the beret. So this is the important part, and this also helps that the beret lay flat. So the top of it's relatively flat, and like I said, you're going to come out of this with 10 posts and 10 double crochets. You'll finish this off with a slip stitch join, and this is what the start of that star beret or the star itself is going to look like. Again, we're going to start with a chain 1 after our slip stitch join, and we're going to increase to 30. So in here, what you're going to do is after that chain 1, you're going to do a front post double crochet on the front post that we created. And then in the next stitch, that double crochet on top, you are going to put 2 double crochets into that one stitch. And you're going to keep doing that all the way around. And at the end, you will have a total of 30 stitches. The next one, you're going to have 40. So you're going to do that front post double crochet on the post. Your next double crochet, you're going to put 1 double crochet in there. And then in the next one, you are going to do 2 double crochets. And you're going to repeat that pattern until you have 40 stitches. The next row is a 50 stitch row, and this is just your increase. What you're doing again is just the same thing. You're going to start with that front post double crochet, then you are going to do a double crochet in the next 2 stitches, and in that third stitch you're going to do 2 double crochets, and that is going to get you to your 50 row. Now moving on to the increase of 60. This is where I changed colors. You don't have to change colors. You can keep going the same color. I just wanted to. Everyone can change colors in different ways. This is the way that I do it. I leave the last stitch half done, and then I pull in my next color. To me, this just makes a nice transition. The one thing that you need to make sure you do is make sure that all of the yarn strands are tight. Otherwise, they look a little loose, which would make sense if you don't tighten them. But I also lay over the tails. And the reason I lay over the tails is because then it allows me to weave in to the actual stitches the tails, and I don't have to go back and weave in all the tails at the end. So here we are, we've changed our color. We're going to do our chain 1, but in this next row, what we're going to do is we're going to do some half double crochets. And what you are going to do with this new white strand is you are going to do half double crochets in each of the next 4 stitches, including that first stitch that you just did that chain 1. And now we're just working on the top. We're not worried about the posts or anything along that line. And like I said, you are going to do half double crochets in the next 4 stitches. After you finish that, in that 5th stitch, you're going to do 2 half double crochets in that stitch. And that's your repeat all the way around, and that's going to get you to 60 stitches in that row. Once you complete that, you're going to do a slip stitch join, and we're going to go on to the next row. I changed color, like I said. You don't have to, but I did. And in this row, you are going to do, after the chain 1, you're going to do half double crochets in the first 5 stitches, and then in that 6th stitch, you're going to do 2 half double crochets. That's going to get you to 70 stitches all the way around. And after this, we are going to go on to our next row. We are still increasing. This one is a little bit of a decorative row as we go into the increase to 80, but we're just going to finish this row up with a slip stitch join. Moving on to row 8, I changed my color yet again. And this one I did the chain 1. I skipped the first stitch. Then I went into the next stitch and I did a half double crochet. Then I went back to the stitch I skipped and did a half double crochet in that. And the next stitch next to that, you've already put a stitch in. So we're going to skip a chain, or I'm sorry, the stitch, and we're going to do a half double crochet, and we are going to go back to the half double crochet that we skipped. And you are going to do that 3 times. So you're making 3 little X's. In the fourth, or actually it's the sixth stitch, you are going to do 2 half double crochets in the same stitch. And you are going to repeat that all the way around. So basically you're making 3 X's with that half double crochet, going back to the skipped half double crochet, and then you are going to do the 2 half double crochets, and that's the pattern that you are going to keep doing until you get 80 stitches all the way around. You're probably thinking, this is a lot of stitches. It is. A beret is a very wide hat at the top, and it comes down and it fits around the face a little bit more. So we're going to be going on to row 9 here. And row 9 is a relatively simple stitch. And what you are going to do here, like I said, I change colors again. You don't need to, but if you want to, you're going to do a chain 1. In your first stitch, you are going to do a half double crochet, and you will do those half double crochets in the first 7 stitches. When you get to the 8th stitch, you are going to put 2 half double crochets in the same stitch, and you are going to repeat that pattern all the way around until you get a total of 90 stitches. As we go into row 10, again, I changed color. Just wanted to make it a little bright, and I had a whole bunch of left over, so I wanted to use them up. So row 10 is our last increase row, and again, you're going to start with that chain 1, and you are going to do half double crochets in the first 8 stitches. When you get to the 9th stitch, you're going to do 2 half double crochets, and that is your increase and your pattern, or your repeat pattern, all the way around. So again, you're going to do half double crochets in 8 stitches. In the 9th stitch, you're going to do 2 half double crochets. At this time, after this row is complete, you should have 100 stitches all the way around. And then this is the last of the increase rows that we are going to do. As we move on to row 11, this is just a row as a transition row. We're going to chain 1, and we're going to do an entire row of double crochets. So you'll have 100 double crochets all the way around. At the end, we are going to do a slip stitch join like we have done with all of our other rows, and then we'll be moving on to row 12. In row 12, we're going to be adding a little bit of decorative flair, I guess. With this one, we're going to be doing some front posts. So we do our chain 1, and then we're going to do front post double crochets on the first 2 front posts. Then, after we finish those 2, on the next on the next 3 stitches, we're just going to do double crochets, and that's right on the top. So right there, we are going to do 3 double crochets, and that's your repeat pattern all the way around. You're going to do front post double crochets in 2 stitches, and then you're going to do double crochets in the next 3. And this is going to be the start of a little bit of like an arrow pattern. It's very subtle in what it looks like, but it's just adding a little more decoration to it. And again, this will have 100 stitches all the way around. As we move into row 13, again, starting with the chain 1, our first stitch is going to be a double crochet right there on the top, and then we're going to do 2 front post double crochets. So skip that first front post that we did in the last row and go into the second one and do a front post double crochet, and then we're going to do another front post double crochet, and then we're going to do 2 double crochets. So this is like a count of 5, starting with double crochet, 2 front post double crochets, followed by 2 double crochets. And you're going to do that all the way around, ending the row with a slip stitch join. Then as we move on to row 14, we're going to continue with this pattern of these front post double crochets, making a little bit of a pattern in the rows together. So you can see it's kind of going on an angle here. So for row 14, again, we started with a chain 1, and then we're going to do 2 double crochets followed by 2 front post double crochets. So what this is going to do is it's going to go in that back. You're going to skip one of the front post double crochets from the previous round, go into the second one, and then make another one. So that might have been a little confusing the way that I said that, but as you start working it up, you will see the pattern kind of have a little raised arrow in here. So again, the pattern for this row is double crochet in the first 2 stitches, front post double crochet in the next 2 stitches, and double crochet in the 5th stitch, and repeat that all the way around till you get to a slip stitch join. In row 15, I changed my color again, and this is the point of the little arrow on the side, or the stepped appearance, I guess, if you want to call it that. So in row 15, we're going to start with the chain 1, and then we are going to do double crochets in the first 3 stitches. After completing that, we are going to do front post double crochets in the next 2 stitches, and that is your 5 count pattern that you are going to work all the way around until you get to the end of the row, in which you will do a slip stitch join. I changed this color just to give it a little bit of an accent row before I start going down with the arrow a little bit, going the other way. So you'll see what I mean once we get a little further along. In row 16, again, I changed the color. You don't have to. You started with a chain 1, and then what you're going to do is you're going to do 2 or double crochets in the first 2 stitches, followed by front post double crochets in the next 2 stitches, and a double crochet in the 5th stitch. And that's the pattern all the way around. So just to repeat one more time for you, is you're going to do double crochets in the first 2 stitches, front post double crochets in the next 2 stitches, and a double crochet in the 3rd stitch. And you're going to repeat that all the way around, and you're going to end this row with a slip stitch join. Row 17 is just a continuation of this pattern that we're making, starting with a chain 1, and in this row your first stitch is going to be a double crochet, followed by 2 front post double crochets, and then the next 2 stitches are double crochets. So the pattern is double crochet, front post double crochet for the next 2 stitches, and double crochet for the last 2 stitches. That is your 5 count pattern for this row. When you get to the end, you will finish with a slip stitch join, and you will be ready to move on to the next 2 rows. 18 and 19 are the exact same pattern. So for row 18 and for row 19, starting again with a chain 1, and you're going to do a front post double crochet in the first 2 stitches, and then you're going to do double crochets in the next 3, and that's your 5 count pattern. front post double crochet, front post double crochet, followed by double crochets in the next 3. When you finish this row, you are going to finish with a slip stitch join. Also, after this row, that is the end of the top of the beret. The next part that we'll be working on is the part that goes around, tightly around the forehead. And to do that, we're going to change our hook to a little smaller hook. I'm going to move down to a 5mm hook. As you can see here, I played yarn chicken and I actually won. So let's move on to row 20. We dropped our hook size down. Just because we dropped our hook size down, I don't want you to get these stitches too tight, because when we're working with single crochets, what can happen is they can get really tight and they don't have a lot of stretch or give. And since this is going around the person's head, you want a little bit of stretch. So just make sure that you keep a nice even tension, not too tight and not too loose. So for row 20, starting again with a chain 1, and we're going to do an entire row of single crochets, and at the end of this row we're going to do a slip stitch join. You should have 100 stitches at the end of this row. In our next 2 rows, we're actually going to do some decreases because we want this to fit snugly around the head. So for row 21, starting again with a chain 1, we are going to do single crochets in the first 3 stitches, and then we are going to join the 4th and 5th stitch together with a single crochet 2 together. So you're going to go in, pull up a loop, go into the next stitch, pull up a loop, 3 loops on your hook, and pull through all 3. And then we're going to repeat that pattern again. We're going to do single crochets in the next 3 stitches, and then we're going to do a single crochet 2 together, combining stitches 4 and 5. You're going to do that all the way around, and you should have a total of 80 stitches after this row, and you're going to end it with a slip stitch join on this again. The next row is another decrease row, and after you do your chain 1, you are going to do single crochets in the next 6 stitches, and then in stitch 7 and 8 you are going to do a single crochet 2 together, very similar to what we did in the last row. And after you complete this row, you will have a total of 70 stitches, and that is the last decrease that we'll do. So for the remaining rows 23 through row 27, if you want a bigger band, you might want to go to row 28 or 29. We are just going to start these rows with a chain 1 and do single crochets all the way around with a slip stitch join. Like I had mentioned earlier, when you're doing single crochets, make sure that you keep your tension not too tight, because it doesn't allow for a lot of stretch when you're doing single crochets. And as we finish up these last few rows, I like to add just a little smoothness, I guess, little bit of a flare beyond just a single crochet into the end of this band. And I did that with a crab stitch. So I'm going to show you really quick. I joined this, and I'm going to do a chain 1. For a single crochet, you would just go to the left. For a crab stitch, you're actually going to go to the right, and you're going to turn your hook, and you're going to go in from the front to the back, pull up a loop, 2 loops on your hook, and go through both of the loops on your hook. As you go through and you pull that yarn, you're doing a little twist. You're making a little twist here. So I have a video on how to do the crab stitch, and I will put a link to it. But I do this just to, add a nice little finish on the end of a row of single crochets. You don't have to do it. You can finish it with a row of single crochets if you like. But I just like how it looks. Again, watch your tension, because you do want it to have a little stretch in your hat. A couple things just to go back is I've used a whole bunch of just leftover yarn. There was nothing specific about this yarn that I used. It was a 4 medium weight. Nice way to use up some of your extra little balls of yarn. I really enjoyed this hat. I thought the berets were kind of cute, and I don't know, I just wanted to make one of my own. So here is a picture or a little video of what that crab stitch looks like and what the whole beret looks like with the little starburst in the back. And I do truly appreciate you stopping by. As always, peace, love, and happiness. Take care, and until we meet up on YouTube again. Thanks.